Can you school us a little bit on LGBTQ plus and what that means and what that includes underneath this, somewhere under the rainbow umbrella that we have created?
I say this in every class that I teach, any guest lecture that I give, any seminar that I facilitate. I always say, learning is where we are, not where we want to be. When we learn, it happens where we are, not where we want to be. Learning is where we are, not where we want to be. What that means is that where we are right now is where we are to have the ability to learn what we can comprehend and what's going to start us on this journey. Start with just learning, what is the L and the G and the B
and the T? Yes.
What is that? And then once we get this anchor on that, then maybe having that understanding helps us then to learn, well, wait a minute. You talked about gender expression. How do we talk about this? What exactly is that? And then when we talk about that stuff, then maybe our brains have enough of that food and nourishment in it to feed this idea of, you know what, now let's figure out, how do these relationships work? And let's talk about more theoretical things, and let's talk about science behind things. Learning what those letters stand for, learning what they mean and how they apply to the people that we love is really important for building a safe community where we can be ourselves, where we can explore ourselves, and also, if we need to, we can categorize ourselves. One thing that I will say is, first and foremost, how I answer these may be different than how your friend or your family member or someone sitting next to you in class would define any of these terms or explain it themselves. So I always say that everything we talk about with education when it comes to LGBTQ plus and all of our labels or non-labels or experiences are relative and subjective to who is doing it, because it is a personal experience. So I will say, don't take everything I say as gospel today. Obviously, I have lived experience and I do this, but the whole point of having a conversation like this is so then we can learn how to talk to other people and learn even more.
And ask the questions, right? Ask the questions.
Yeah. Why? Because learning is where we are, not where we want to be.
Exactly.
And I will also say too, that the cool thing that we talked about before about you can be that. You can be this thing and this thing.
Be that thing. Right.
You can be this thing and then this thing, or whatever it might be. And also what can be really confusing is maybe somebody does identify as bisexual, but you've only ever seen them with one person because they keep everything else private, or they keep everything hidden, or they haven't found the person that makes them want to dip their toe yet, but they know in their head and in their heart there's somebody who could. So I think all of that speaks to the importance of these letters give us a guide, but they will never, ever, ever supersede what that person's identity is from the inside out. And these labels are more for us to say, this one fits me today, here, you can use it, than for us to look at someone and say, you look like a lesbian, I'm going to call you this. Oh, you're a this thing, because I learned that watching this broadcast on TCC's website. These are labels for us that we can offer people to help identify us, or to make it easier for us to bridge our relationships, but they're not necessarily needed if we don't want them to be either. So that's kind of my long-winded response to what is the label? Why are these letters important? For some of us, these letters are really important because they give us a home, they give us a family, they give us a community and a place to be. And some of us, these letters really don't matter as much because they may not apply to us, or we just do not care. That happens too. That's all right. But for the sake of learning, because learning happens where we are, not where we want to be, let's talk about I'm going to keep saying that because I want to drill it in that where you are is the perfect place to learn. So LGBTQ plus. That's what we'll go over real quick. So, and now I can do like full day seminars on all the letters and the identities and all that. So when we blow through these, like I'm saying, we're gonna blow through these.
Okay.
So, all right. So LGBTQ plus. L stands for lesbian. That is a female or woman identifying person who is attracted to the same. That's the most basic way to do that, to say that and explain that. I'm going to skip over G for just a second, and we're going to go to B, and that's bisexual. So that's someone who identifies as a male or man, or female or woman, who is attracted to like the other, if that makes sense. So if we're thinking about things on a binary, that's where we can apply bisexual. So if we're talking about male, man, man identifying, female, woman, woman identifying, that's like you can be attracted to either of those.
Okay.
There are terms that are more encompassing, like pansexual, for example,
Right.
which I define for people as like anybody's at risk. And that's kind of like, that's where I fall into, even though there's one term that fits me a little bit better, and we'll get to that in a second. So T is transgender, and that's someone who was born and assigned a sex at birth by a doctor based on things like their body parts or what their hormone levels are or what chromosomes are where. And as they grow up, they say, you know, this external label that somebody else put on me doesn't match who I feel on the inside going out. So I'm going to make those things match. And that's what a transgender individual, it can easily be defined as someone who was given a label when they were born. And as they grow up and get to know themselves, they say, oh, that's not actually the right label because my body and my heart and my soul, we're not all lined up. So let's get everything lined up together. This one tricks people up sometimes when they hear the term trans woman or trans man. So a trans woman is someone who was assigned male at birth, who then grows up and says, I'm actually a woman. And so that transition happens. Trans woman. The same idea with a trans man, someone who was born and given the label of female, and they say, but that's not accurate. That's not who I am. I'm a man, trans man. So that's what the T is. Now we're going to jump back to that second letter, G. The G and the Q are like our two that sometimes cause a little confusion or a little disorientation. So G is gay. And a lot of people don't think of this as being a term that's like divisive or a term that's going to cause any confusion because they just hear it all the time. So at its roots, gay is a man or male or man identifying person who is attracted to the same. We've also, though, over the years, used this term to define anyone who is attracted to like someone of the same sex or gender. That G has actually caused quite a bit of conversation and communication within the community and our allies because people are learning that like we've used this term in a very different way.
Right.
And similarly to the G, the Q has been used in different ways too. So depending on who you ask, in the LGBTQ, the Q could be queer or questioning. Now, I always say, like, if you're questioning, you've got room under the rainbow too. So I'm fine with that representing questioning. And you're under the rainbow. Queer is a term that for a lot of people is being reclaimed to be that like umbrella term that we were just kind of referring to gay had been used for so long. Part of the reason that reclamation is happening is because queer does encompass a little bit more than just gay, straight, and sometimes bi. Queer a lot of times will also encompass our gender identities and our expressions and like our as one of my friends says, our guys, our gals, our non-binary pals.
Nice. That's great.
So that can be a word to encompass all of us under the rainbow.
So did you want to like reference anything with the plus? Because we did LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Did you want to reference anything with the plus, or are we gonna leave it there?
Always. So I love to just say, like, my cliffhanger, not really a cliffhanger. The plus is anything and everything else.
Right.
And for me, that means some of the like identities, labels, or niches that we haven't talked about, like omnisexual, pansexual, aromantic, asexual, non-binary, gender fluid, all of these terms that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. Some can be identified like on their own, and others do really well when they're paired with another label or identity. And so for me, that plus sign translates as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, or anything else really, because there are no rules under the rainbow. Like what fits, that's what the plus is. Because some days you may feel like an L, and other days you may be a B, and other days you might say, well, whether I'm an L or a B, I'm pan, or I'm this, or I'm this. And today I'm feeling this. And that plus sign gives us that like infinite opportunity to be who we are when we are.